Hello, good morning and welcome to the Mining Show brought to you by Blytheweigh. I'm Charlie Gibson. Now, as I always say with mining companies, sometimes the clue is in the name and sometimes the clue is in the share price performance. Sometimes, and it's a very rare case, but this is one of those cases, the clue is in both. Now, the share price in question has gone up 17% in just the last 3 weeks, and we're going to hear in a minute exactly why that is. And the share in question is Condor. Condor, whose shares have been soaring up in this case, as I say, 17% in 3 weeks, and as the Americans will say, do the math. If you annualize it, that works out to a big figure. Well, joining me now is the chairman and chief executive of the company, Mark Child. Mark, very good morning to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, all the way, I understand, from sunny Ibiza.
Yes, I am. Yes.
Well, well done. It's good to see that it's almost as sunny here as it is there. I hope you're having a fantastic time. Thank you for joining us from such far off shores. Now, tell us, the share price obviously catalyzed in no uncertain terms in the last 3 weeks, but unless I'm much mistaken, you had a public consultation just yesterday, or you put the announcement out just yesterday. Tell us what that was all about.
Yes, we put out an announcement of a public consultation, or was completed last Friday. That would be the same as a public hearing in the UK. So that's after many months of work. And effectively, the company receives authorization from the Ministry of Energy and from the Ministry of the Environment to proceed, that it's passed all the technical studies for a new mine, and to proceed to discuss those and present those studies to the local community. And that's a public consultation. So we held that last Friday.
And what is the significance of this? Why is this important to you?
Oh, this is really important. It's a accumulation, if you like, of the $45 million of investment we put into Nicaragua in the last 7 years. So the project has 80,000 meters of drilling. We've done pre-feasibility studies. We're just permitting. We've got 2.4 million ounces of gold at very high grade. We're just permitting about 35–40% of that. So we're permitting about 800,000 ounces in a single pit. We've had delays on the permits for 2 years. We did have some resettlement to do, and when we last spoke, Charles, we discussed the challenges on permitting, and we redesigned the mine plan in January of this year. We submitted those amendments in January, formally to the ministries. We had a site inspection in March this year. They asked some more questions. We did another $40,000 of studies. And then we got a sign-off saying, right, the 16 technical studies to construct and operate a new mine are fine, no further questions at this stage. Please proceed to the last step, really, which is the public consultation or hearing with the communities. And so it's really important just to get that green light from the ministries to proceed.
So what you did last week is you went to the village at La India, and you went around all the villages. You said big meeting, and what was the feedback you got from them?
Well, we've been working on the community for 3 or 4 years. This is an old mining town that produced 500,000 ounces of gold. The mine closed in 1956. So we're pushing an open door in many ways, that it's not a former mining community, which really helps. And there's a lot of poverty in that particular part of Nicaragua. Think of old mining towns that have hit hard times. So the actual attendance was very high. I mean, we had 499 registered applications, or people attending the actual public hearing. We had, during the weeks up to it, where we did house-to-house visits. So the social team of 15 people distribute out lots of leaflets and brochures. We have an information office in the village, for people to come and discuss the project. And so it's accumulation of all that work. I mean, 600 applicants for jobs just shows that the people really want it.
And so was there a lot of support for the project, or did anyone have any questions? Were there any detractors? Was there any controversy?
Yes, I mean, there was a small group that demonstrated, but there's but that was minor compared with the number of people supporting. In fact, when they demonstrated, we had about 400 people plus stand up and say, Condor stays, Condor stays. I can send you some videos of it. It's quite impressive. We want the mine, we want the jobs. So there are anti-mining people all over the world, but it's in a minority there. And it also doesn't just link in with anti-mining. There are other elements at play. There are a couple of people on the opposition party who, because the government supports a project, the opposition opposes a project. So not really anti-mining, but overwhelmingly we have support from the local community.
So what does that mean in terms of the next stages for you? Where do you go from here? You go back to the government, do you, and say, right, the local community support this. What do you need to do to get to that final approval, the final piece of paper, which means you can start breaking ground?
Right. Well, the government organised the public consultation in the sense that 3 ministries actually attended it. It was fully recorded. So we have the Ministry of Energy and Mines, we have the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Forestry, and the 2 local mayors' office. And those 3 ministries and local mayor's office are called the Interinstitutional Committee. So that committee goes away from that public consultation, writes a report and says feedback from the community, which we've also taken in the preceding weeks and months as to what people think. And that's why we redesigned the mine in January to avoid any resettlement at all. So we have been listening. We've been very sensitive to the community. We have a smaller pit of 20–25% because we're not moving people. So that institutional committee make a recommendation. They've done that. They write the final reports this week. And really, we should be looking at getting permits granted in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Could happen quicker, but ultimate decision is a political decision, just like in the UK. So if we look at previous cases, mines of B2 Gold or Golden Rain, when they hold a public consultation, the permit normally comes in 2 to 4 weeks. So my expectations will be granted a permit to construct and operate the mine. That's the master permit in Nicaragua, and that's suddenly very valuable. We're off to we've got the permit to build a mine, which is fantastic. So I'm hopeful we get that in the next 3 to 4 weeks. But seeing's believing, Charles. This is a country which has some political turmoil at the moment, but I don't think we would have got the public consultation and the green lights if we weren't doing the right thing and had a strong social license to operate.
And then let's just take that scenario that you get your final approval, the last permit, if you like, in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Then are you all ready to go? Are you shovel ready, as the Canadians say? Do the bulldozers start moving?
No, we're not shovel ready. So we have a pre-feasibility at the moment. We would have the permits under the Nicaraguan law. So there are 3 things we need to do. So in the next 12 months from the grant of the permits, we need to take the pit, the redesigned pit, to bankable feasibility study. We know there's about 600,000 ounces of recovered gold in that. We've got 2 schedules we've done internally. There's a steady mining rate of 2,300 tonnes a day. And so that would see 80,000 ounces of gold a year from a single pit. We're going to look at that and see, can we mine it a bit faster? So if there's 600,000 ounce recovered gold into gold bars, can we mine that at 100,000 ounces of gold a year for 6 years? So we got to finalise the bankable, and there's $1 million got to be spent on the processing plant design and so forth. So that's one thing, to get a bankable out on that pit. The second thing is, while we're doing that, to drill out some feeder pits. Now, we have today around 160,000 ounces of gold in 2 feeder pits. We believe we've got a third one, which we drilled out last year on Mestiza. That's very important. We're having that resource done at the moment. Now, we could have another 250,000 ounces of feeder pits. So the next part of the strategy would be, while we produce the bankable on the main pit, can we add another 20,000–30,000 ounces of gold a year from feeder pits to make it a bit bigger? So we start to size the plant day one on nearer the 110, 130,000 ounces of gold production per annum. That's what I'd like to do, but we've got to go through those studies. And the third thing we need to do in 12 months is add another 1 million ounces of gold to take this up to, 3.3, 3.5 million ounces. And then that starts to get on a global scale of gold deposits. And then we start construction. I mean, we've got to raise the cash for all those things, but I see two steps: a clear 12 months after the grant of permit, which is additional study work, drill out the feeder pits, add another 1 million ounces, and then we're into the construction phase of the base case.
Okay, and construction, I think I read CapEx about $120 million?
That's correct, yes.
And finance roughly 50-50 debt equity?
Well, we'll run through a number of financing scenarios during that 12 months of additional study period where we're drilling out the pit to bankable study and adding in the feeder pits and so forth. So we've got plenty of time to run a different matrix of, is it 60-40 debt equity? Do we put a forward gold sale into it? Do we put a stream into it? What is the ultimate and optimum mining mix, bearing in mind gold prices and the high grade nature of the project? We are under $700 all-in sustaining cash cost, and that's the beauty of this. It's a super, well, I say it's a high-grade deposit, and it's got lower quartile all-in sustaining cash costs. So, despite political issues, gold does sell for whatever, the same price everywhere. So I'm optimistic.
Now, you were talking about you redesigned the pit so you don't have to do any resettlement. But you're saying as you're going forward, you're going to look at these feeder pits. If the drilling is successful and you can take material from these feeder pits and that you can process in the plant, does that require you to re-permit, or does the permit that you're hopefully going to get in 3 to 4 weeks' time, does that cover all of those feeder pits as well?
Well, the plant size is up to 2,800 tons per day. Which is 1 million tons per annum. So that'll on about 2.8 grams. That'll comfortably process about 100,000 ounces of gold a year. So that might just do the big pit, depending on what we can do with the big pit, how quick we mine it. If we were to bring in feeder pits, they would need more work done and they would need permitting. Yes, that's correct. So we might just start with what we got the permit from, but there's quite a lot of time to do that. I think that once we start employment and so forth during the study phases and the drilling out parts and adding the ounces, and having got one permit, I think bringing in little ones. We're doing that study at the moment, Charles. So one of the pits is 100,000 ounces of gold. So we're talking, and another one's 58,000. So they're very small feeder pits. So these are not, unlike the main pit of 800,000 ounces, we're talking 60 to 100,000 ounce size each for the pit. So they're not complex to do, and there's no resettlement required on those because they're on outlying areas.
So does that make them easier to permit then?
Yes, theoretically, yes. I think the big red flag on the project was resettlement.
So and now, because there's no need for any resettlement at all, that is one of the things that you have effectively a conclusion on. So in your greatest hopes and expectations, I suppose, when do you think we might see this moving forward? It sounds to me like you've got a year of studies and then bankable, then you raise the money, and then you're looking to go into the construction. And so I'm sort of assuming second half of next year is when we might see the construction phase of the project starting. Would that be reasonable?
Yes, if everything aligns, you would start your construction towards the end of next year, assuming financing is lined up and so on. So the initial ground preparation and ground work. That's correct.
And then just remind us finally, the project must have an NPV on the pre-feasibility you've done on it so far. Just remind us what that is, and just remind us what your market capitalization is, so we get an idea of the value that's in the company and the value of the project to the company.
Well, in dollar terms, and we are dual listed on Toronto, but in dollar terms, our market capitalization is just over $30 million US. The NPV on 4 production scenarios was 195 million. So our price to book ratio is under 0.2 times. Our ounces in the ground number, I think around now, is about $12 an ounce in the ground. And so both of those are very beaten up. And the reason for that is twofold. One, a 2-year delay on permits, because people give up and go away, and there's great uncertainty. And the political situation in Nicaragua has also knocked the share price a bit, but that has stabilized recently. And I think the ministries are functioning despite rumors to the contrary. And we just held a public consultation. So, and I'm optimistic permits will be granted. But I think we will be good to put in, start drilling by the end of the year and put in 20,000 meters of drilling, add another 1 million ounces and drill out the main pit to bankable and the feeder pits to come in. So that'll provide news catalysts as people are reminded, investors are reminded, of the quality of the asset in the ground.
But it gives you a good idea, I suppose, of the upside opportunity to investors. There you are with a market cap of 30 million, and your upside is about, what, 6.5 odd times compared to that 30 million. Thank you very much indeed. I think that's probably all we have time for, but thank you very much. That is all from me, Charlie Gibson. That was my guest, Mark Child, the Chief Executive and Chairman of Condor, and we will look forward to seeing you next week with more mining opportunities whose share price, well, may or may not have gone up like this one has done, up 17% in just the last 3 weeks. As I say, that's all we have time for from me, but until then, please, you have a very capital week.